Americans are finally catching a break on inflation. Data out this week showing consumer prices in June rose at the slowest annual rate in more than 2 years. And wholesale prices rose less than expected. This is good news for the Biden administration, especially as President Biden struggles with low approval ratings as he kicks off his re-election campaign. Here to break it all down, Yahoo Finance's Rick Newman. And Rick, in this week's Bidenomics, you're taking into account that, yes, this is a step forward here for the president, but are voters going to notice?
So a couple of interesting data points here. Good news on inflation, as you mentioned. And also today we saw a notable improvement in consumer confidence, biggest jump in almost 2 years. And a lower inflation has a lot to do with it. However, that is just not showing up at all in President Biden's approval rating. So inflation has dropped from a high of about 9% last June. It's now down to 3%. 3% headline inflation. If it were just at 3%, just sort of hovering around there, nobody would really care that much. But of course, the problem here is that all the price hikes that have been built into the system during the last 2 years. And here's the real problem for President Biden. Inflation since he came into office is up 16%. That's from January of 2021. And incomes are only up 12%. So even though inflation is coming down, people have fallen behind relative to inflation. That means the typical family's purchasing power has dropped. The typical paycheck simply buys less. So what will make people feel better is if we actually get falling prices or incomes rise faster than inflation for many months in a row, and that does not further add to inflation. So people feel like they're finally getting ahead of price increases for once. For now, they don't, and it's not a mystery why Biden remains unpopular. That's the reason right there. People need to feel like their paycheck goes further.
Well, Rick, something that might help win some voters back in his favor is the fact that he automatically did forgive the Biden administration for giving $39 billion in student debt for just over 800,000 borrowers. It's a result, though, and this is important to point out, of something that the Biden administration needed to do here, administration's fix here to repayment plans. It's a victory for borrowers. How do you think that's going to translate? Is it going to really move the needle when it comes to the polls?
That alone is not going to move the needle. So just to put it in context, Shauna, the big program, the big executive action that the Supreme Court shot down would have forgiven up to $20,000 of student debt for more than 40 million Americans. This affects only about 800,000. There seems to be a good chance this will stand. It's just a tiny fraction of all the people who have student debt. But what Biden is clearly going to do is he's going to campaign for re-election on this issue of student debt. He's already saying it, and I think he's going to continue to bang this drum. He's going to say, I've done everything I can on my own to help people out who have overwhelming amounts of student debt. But the Republican-led Supreme Court overturned it. And in order to really get this done, we have to elect more Democrats to Congress. He is definitely going to run on that. Whether that's going to make a difference, who knows? Is it going to, push up turnout among younger voters and, the people most affected by this? It could. And there are going to be other important ways he's going to be trying to do that as well. But Biden's just going to try to turn this into a campaign event where he says, I'm doing everything I can. But in order to really help, we got to elect more Democrats.
All right, well, we will wait and see what this message is from the Biden administration over the coming year and a half. Rick, I love the little shimmy as we entered the segment. I caught the very end of it.
That music makes me want to dance. That weekly Bidenomics music. I mean, plus it is Friday.
I was going to say Friday afternoon. It's the perfect time to dance. Yeah. All right, Rick, we're going to leave it there. Thanks so much. Have a good weekend.
See you, Shauna.